Hare Krishna, beginning a reading from Vedic Paradigm, edited by His Holiness Dharna Goswami, from the teachings of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Continuing the chapter entitled The Guru. The first process is that of surrender. We have to find an exalted person and willingly surrender before him. The Shastras enjoin that before we take a guru, we study. Sorry about that. Before we take a guru, we study him carefully to find out whether we can surrender to him. We should not accept a guru suddenly, out of fanaticism. That is very dangerous. The guru should also study the person who wants to become a disciple to see if he is fit. That is the way a relationship is established between the guru and disciple. Everything is provided, but we must take up the process seriously. Then we can be trained to become a bona fide disciple. First, we must find a bona fide guru, establish our relationship with him, and act accordingly. Then our life will be successful, for the guru can enlighten the sincere disciple who is in darkness. Everyone is born a rascal and a fool. If we are born learned, why do we need to go to school? If we do not cultivate knowledge, we are no better than animals. An animal may say that there is no need of books and that he has become a guru. But how can anyone obtain knowledge without the study of authoritative books on science and philosophy? Rascal gurus try to avoid these things. We must understand that we are all born rascals and fools, and that we have to be enlightened. We have to receive knowledge to make our lives perfect. If we do not perfect our lives, we are defeated. What is this defeat? The struggle for existence. We are trying to obtain a better life, to attain a superior position. And for this we are struggling very hard. But we do not know what a superior position actually is. Whatever position we have in this material world must be given up. We may have a good position or a bad position. In any case, we cannot remain here. We might earn millions of dollars and think, now I am in a good position. But a little dysentery or cholera will finish our position. If the bank fails, our position is gone. So actually, there is no good position in this material world. It is a farce. Those who try to attain a better position in the material world are ultimately defeated, because there is no better position. The Bhagavad Gita 14:26 says what the better position is. Mam chayo vyabhacharena bhakti hogena sevate sakunhan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Is there any science that gives us the knowledge by which we may become immortal? Yes, we may become immortal, but not in the material sense. We cannot receive this knowledge in so-called universities. However, there is knowledge contained in the Vedic scriptures by which we may become immortal. That immortality is our better position. No more birth, no more death, no more old age, no more disease. Thus the guru takes on a very great responsibility. He must guide his disciple and enable him to become an eligible candidate for the perfect position, immortality. The guru must be competent to lead his disciple back home, back to Godhead. How does one know if a particular guru is bona fide? It is called Sadhu Shastra Gunavakya, 3 things that are for knowledge. Sadhu, saintly person, Shastra, scripture, and Guru. So one statement we have to corroborate with another statement. If you accept somebody as Guru, then you have to corroborate it whether Shastra says that he is Guru or any saintly person says that he is Guru. That is the way. Similarly, when you take a scripture, you have to know it from the spiritual master, whether that is actually scripture, whether it is accepted by the saintly person. Sadhu. Similarly, sadhu also, whether Guru says, yes, he is sadhu, whether Shastra says, yes, he is sadhu. There are 3 things, sadhu, Shastra, Guru. So one has to accept. So to accept one, you have to take the opinion of the other 2. Then you'll get the right way. Just like who is a guru, that is stated in the Shastras. Shrotriham Brahmanishtam. Shastra says, Tad Vigyanartam Sagurum Ivhabhikached. Quote, one must approach a guru. End quote. Then the same question comes, who is a guru? That is also stated, Shrotriham Brahmanishtam. He's well versed in Vedas, knowledge of Vedas, and fully Krishna conscious. He is guru. What are the personal qualifications of a guru? A sober person who can tolerate the urges to speak. The mind's demand. The actions of anger and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. First, one must control his speaking power. Every one of us has the power of speech. As soon as we get an opportunity, we begin to speak. If we do not speak about Krishna consciousness, we speak about all sorts of nonsense. A toad in a field speaks by croaking, and similarly everyone who has a tongue, even if all he has to say is nonsense. The croaking of the toad, however, simply invites the snake, please come here and eat me. Nevertheless, although it is inviting death, the toad goes on croaking. The talking of materialistic men and impersonalist Mayavad philosophers may be compared to the croaking of frogs. They are always speaking nonsense and thus inviting death to catch them. Controlling speech, however, does not mean self-imposed silence. The external process of Mauna, as Mayavadi philosophers think. Silence may appear helpful for some time, but ultimately it proves a failure. The meaning of controlled speech conveyed by Srila Rupa Goswami advocates the positive process of Krishna Katha, engaging the speaking process and glorifying the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. The tongue can thus glorify the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord. The preacher of Krishna Katha is always beyond the clutches of death. This is the significance of controlling the urge to speak. We're understanding from what we're hearing in this text, personal qualifications of a guru. A few things. He must be able to control the senses, of which the mind is the captain. The mind is the 6th sense, and due to the mind, the living entities are struggling very hard in this conditioned life. Mana Shastra Indriyani Prakriti Stani Karshati. So we must control the mind and also the urge to speak. The urge to speak of the senses, the tongue is the most voracious, always wanting to taste opulent food, always wanting to talk useless philosophy, or dry speculative philosophy, useless speech regarding mundane activity, so forth. So the way of controlling the tongue is not to negate its speaking, not to just go on a month-long fast. We need food. Similarly, we need to speak. The soul is one that's always active. This is part of his position. We're a person. People have qualities. Qualities are to be expressed. So if we try to limit ourselves from our own eternal personality, which is unique to our soul, then really that's not any kind of happiness. That's just negation of the negative. But negation of the negative doesn't mean we have to also negate the positive. So if you can understand that negation of the negative going to zero is better than negative, if we can understand that, then shouldn't we also understand that going to the positive side of the spectrum is better than zero? Therefore, engaging our tongue in its proper use to glorify the Supreme Lord. And we have so many ways to do that. We can glorify the name, chant his name, his form, his qualities, his pastimes. As the soul is always active, so is the super soul. So is the supreme person, of which all of us, the parts and parcels, emanate from. So if the Lord's parts and parcels have activities and are always needing to be doing something, then where do you think we get that from? It's the part and parcel that mimics the same qualities, or that is composed of the same composition of the Lord, being Sat Chit Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. So we share the same qualities with the Lord in a limited capacity. The Lord has unlimited opulence that he displays in beauty, fame, wealth, renunciation, strength, these things. But the soul also has these characteristics. They're just limited. The Lord can be everywhere at once. His principal position is that he's omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. So therefore he is the supreme enjoyer. He can enjoy like we can't even imagine. And he enjoys by these pastimes, enacting these loving exchanges, ultimately with his own energy. So there's the energy, which is Krishna, the all-attractive supreme person, and then there's the energetic, his own self that he's expanded out, like the sun has rays that emanate from its being. So does God have expansions that come from him, and some of these are partial expansions, some of these are parts of the partial expansions. It gets really philosophical, but the living entity, the conditioned living entity, is of his marginal potency. The Lord has three main energies, one being his spiritual potency, the other being his material potency, and within the middle there's the living entity, the minute part and parcel, which is his marginal potency. And this marginal potency is either within contact of the spiritual potency or within contact of the material potency. The marginal living entity is fluctuating. Whatever he's coming in contact with, he obtains those qualities. The Lord himself never comes under such sway of illusion, never comes under such possibility for contamination in the same way that we do. Because we're so small, we become influenced by that which we associate with. The Lord can take any kind of association and not be affected by those properties. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the Lord has many pastimes. He's the supreme enjoyer with unlimited opulence that the living entity can engage their tongue in speaking about. And as the living entity engages his tongue in speaking about these wonderful pastimes, the wonderful forms, the wonderful names and qualities of the Lord, he takes himself outside of that contact with material energy. Material energy means we're without Krishna. He begins to glorify the Lord, and all of a sudden that brings him closer to Krishna. This is the purification of chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare, Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare, Hare. As we're chanting the Lord's glories, His holy name, we're again making contact with Him and with that spiritual potency, and we're cleansing the heart that's been so contaminated due to life without God. We've been covered like a mirror. There's a mirror in the heart. There's a mirror in the mind. And this mirror has been filthy, covered over. So the spiritual entity, or the living entity, who's part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, he's of that same spiritual potency. Just because he comes under contact, just because he comes under the effect of the material energy, doesn't mean he becomes material. He ever ceases his eternal being, which is, anything that's spiritual is eternal, and anything that's material is temporary or always changing. The energy is always shifting, but the soul is eternal. It's full of knowledge and it's full of bliss, and that's the same situation that the Lord is in. It's just we forget. So as we chant the holy name of the Lord, we cleanse the mirror of the mind. We cleanse the heart of all unwanted things, of all forgetfulness of Krishna, of God. And we begin to develop the love of God, which is the supreme perfection of our life. So the only thing that's changing through the process of chanting Hare Krishna, through the process of remembering the Lord, or hearing about the Lord, or praying to the Lord, or serving the Lord's instructions, is that we're wiping off that mirror so we can see our true self that stands in front of it. Right now, what we see is an image of ourselves that's all distorted because we're misidentifying ourselves with what we're not, which is our body or our mind. These things they're ours only on a temporary basis, and they are given to us according to past actions, karma, what we desired and also what we deserved has become a product of now who we think we are. The body that we find ourselves inhabiting in, it's the soul that inhabits the body, much like a driver inhabits his vehicle, or he is found within his car for some time, and he gets out, he might enter another car. He trades his car in for another one. The spiritual soul trades his body in for another one, and this is the process of reincarnation. So we should aim with all of our consciousness to stop taking material bodies and become immortal, to go to the eternal reality, which is full of knowledge and full of bliss, to leave the illusion, to leave the darkness and go to the light. It says here, Krishna Soya Samhamaya Haiha Andakara Yahan Krishna Tahan Na Himayara Arikara. That's from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 22:31, and it says, Krishna is just like the sun and Maya is just like darkness. If the sun is present, there's no question of darkness. Similarly, if Krishna is present in the mind, there is no possibility of the mind's being agitated by Maya's influence. The yogic process of negating all material thoughts will not help. To try to create a vacuum in the mind is artificial. The vacuum will not remain. However, if one always thinks of Krishna and how to serve Krishna best, one's mind will be naturally controlled. There we go. So just by always thinking of Krishna, how to serve Krishna, that's how we bring the mind under control. The mind is incredibly difficult to curb. Manho Dinagraham Chalam. It's restless. Chanchalam Himana Krishna. Pramati Balavadradham. Tasyaham Nigraham Anye. Vayariva Siddhushkaram. Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita says that to control the mind seems to me more difficult than controlling the wind. And Krishna, later on, he says, Asam Shayam Mahabaho Mano Denigraham Chalam. He says that it's possible to curb the restless mind, but only through constant determination and a steady practice. So this is the importance of having a sadhana, a spiritual discipline, a practice, one that you can show up to, whether you feel like it or not. You build the discipline, you build the strength through showing up even when it's tough. Any great athlete, he shows up to work, to better himself, even on the days where he doesn't feel like it, because he can keep in the back of his mind, he's still orientated to his goal. He's set a goal, and he's moving forward, whether his own mind is trying to sabotage him or not. He's not listening to it. He knows what he wants, and he's moving towards it. The devotee of the Lord, the bhakti yogi, one who is serious about getting out of this world of birth and death, he himself never forgets the goal. And therefore, he never falls down in any circumstance. Mam chayo vyavacharena bhakti yogena sevate saguna samatityayan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. That one who is engaged in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any regard, he at once transcends the modes of material nature and comes to the level of Brahman, and he realizes his own self. Unreal self-realization, as we read yesterday in Nectar of Devotion, is to be God-realized, because when we're fully realized in ourself, we're fully realized that I'm a servant of God. And we can only understand that we're a servant of God when we know how great God is and why it is that we should serve him. So the two go hand in hand, self-realization and God-realization. So if Krishna is present in the mind, there is no possibility of the mind's being agitated by Maya's influence. The yogic process of negating all material thoughts will not help. To try to create a vacuum in the mind is artificial. The vacuum will not remain. However, if one always thinks of Krishna and how to serve Krishna best, one's mind will naturally be controlled. Similarly, anger can be controlled. We cannot stop anger altogether, but if we simply become angry with those who blaspheme the Lord or the devotees of the Lord, we control our anger in Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became angry with the miscreant brothers Jagai and Madhai, who blasphemed and struck Nityananda Prabhu. In his Shikshastaka, Lord Chaitanya wrote, Chinharapi sunichena, tarorapi sahishnuna. Tolerant than a tree, one should be humbler than the grass and more tolerant than the tree. One may then ask why the Lord exhibited his anger. The point is that one should be ready to tolerate all insults to one's own self. But when Krishna or his pure devotee is blasphemed, a genuine devotee becomes angry and acts like fire against the offenders. Krodha, anger, cannot be stopped, but it can be applied rightly when we've purified ourselves from this false ego, this false reality, when it becomes properly orientated to our eternal reality, when we make that shift, when we turn our head towards God, we're no longer acting in anger out of our misidentification with who we think we are. Anger, material anger, comes from the unfulfilled lust that the living entity has, that drives him crazy like anything when the enjoyment that he's longing for doesn't match up to what he thinks it should. So this comes from the attachment that we have to our sense objects. It comes from wanting to control and essentially become the Lord over all that it is that we see and survey. So when we fit in to our eternal position as a servant of the servant, then there's no more trying to lord it over everything that we survey. It's simply, how can I be of service to the Lord and his devotee. That's my real position, he comes to find. So therefore, the only thing that's worth being angry at a point like that, if you're the servant, then to be angry at one's own misfortune, it's not really so much a thought. But when he's looking out into the people who he sees serving his dear Lord, his dear devotees, when those people are blasphemed, a genuine devotee becomes angry, and it says acts like fire against the offenders. So in the same way that we can't stop our activity, we cannot stop our anger, we cannot stop our desires, but we can purify all of the above. And this purification is happens to the degree that we put Krishna at the center of our life. Here's an example of anger used in the right cause. It was in anger that Hanuman set fire to Lanka, but he is worshipped as the greatest devotee of Lord Ramachandra. That means that he utilized his anger in the right way. Arjuna serves as another example. He was not willing to fight, but Krishna incited his anger. You must fight. To fight without anger is not possible. Anger is controlled, however, when utilized in the service of the Lord. As for the urges of the tongue, we all experience that the tongue wants to eat palatable dishes. Generally, we should not allow the tongue to eat according to its choice, but we should control the tongue by supplying prasad. The devotee's attitude is that he will eat only when Krishna gives him prasad. That is the way to control the urge of the tongue. One should take prasad at scheduled times and should not eat in restaurants or sweetmeat shops, simply to satisfy the whims of the tongue or belly. If we stick to the principle of taking only prasad, the urges of the belly and tongue can be controlled. In a similar manner, the urges of the genitals, the sex impulse, can be controlled when not used unnecessarily. The genitals should be used to beget a Krishna-conscious child. Otherwise, they should not be used. Krishna consciousness movement encourages marriage not for the satisfaction of the genitals, but for the begetting of Krishna-conscious children. As soon as the children are a little grown up, they are sent to our Gurukul schools in Dallas, Texas, where they are trained to become fully Krishna-conscious devotees. Many such Krishna-conscious children are required, and one who is capable of bringing forth Krishna-conscious offspring is allowed to utilize his genitals. When one is fully practiced in the method of Krishna-conscious control, he can become qualified to be a bona fide spiritual master. In his Anuvriti explanation of Upadeshamrita, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes that our material identification creates three kinds of urges: the urge to speak, the urge or demands of the mind, and the demands of the body. When a living entity falls victim to these three types of urges, his life becomes inauspicious. One who practices resisting these demands or urges is called tapasvi, or one who practices austerities. By such tapasya, one can overcome victimization by material energy, the external potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When we refer to the urge to speak, we refer to useless talking, such as that of the impersonal Mayavad philosophers, or of persons engaged in fruitive activities, technically called karmakand, or of materialistic people who want to simply enjoy life without restriction. All such talks or literatures are practical exhibitions of the urge to speak. Many people are talking nonsensically and writing volumes of useless books, and all of this is the result of the urge to speak. To counteract this tendency, we have to divert our talking to the subject of Krishna. This is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5, 10, and 11. Niya vichaschitra pradham harehasho jagat pavitram paganita karichit tadvayasam tirtamushanti manasa na yatra hamsa niramhantyushikshaya. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. Crows specifically go to very dirty places. This is what they're attracted to. This is the kind of food that they take is garbage. And Sometimes you'll even see two crows fighting over the nastiest, smelliest garbage. And this is what we're hearing is the position of a person who's not using his tongue to glorify the Lord, to glorify the devotees. We have this urge to speak, and it's these three kinds of urges, of which the urge to speak is one of them, that make our life inauspicious. So many people who put themselves on a podium to be seen as a spiritual personality, and they accept disciples or give instruction, they make a big show of their interpretation of spiritual life, and oftentimes they don't give much restriction because they fear that if they give any kind of restriction, then no one's going to follow them. We see the opposite with the Krishna consciousness philosophy, and that speaks to the validity of the movement itself, that there are rules and regulations to follow, and it's for our own purification that we do such things, because if we look at our life and we see that we are unhappy for so many reasons, and we need such practical exhibitions of restraint, of discipline, to make any kind of solid spiritual progress in this life. We're all looking for pleasure, and the only kind of pleasure that can come that's uninterrupted and eternal is from the unmotivated devotional service to the Supreme Lord. This is the highest occupation for all of humanity. This is what distinguishes the human being from the animal, is that the animal is simply eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. It has some sort of sense impulse, and it acts immediately on that sense impulse without discrimination as to whether that thing that it wants is in its real best interest. The animal doesn't know what his best interest is. So similarly, we're no better than animals if we're not asking questions into what our best interest is. We have the faculties to understand that this life that we're living is temporary. Everything which we're interacting with in the material world is temporary. So we should see that such pleasures that have a beginning and end, Hare Krishna, such pleasures that have a beginning and end, the wise man does not delight in them, because they're simply sources of misery. Yehi samsparsha jabo dukkha yonaya evite adyantavanta kontayana teshu ramate buraha. It says Tadvag Visargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadavatyapi Nafhanya Nantasya Yashon Gitani Yat Shanvanti Gayanti Karunanti Sadvaha. On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc. of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. The conclusion is that when only we talk about devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can we refrain from useless, nonsensical talk. We should always endeavor to use our speaking power solely for the purpose of realizing Krishna consciousness. As for the agitations of the flickering mind, they are divided into two divisions. The first is called avirodha priti, or unrestricted attachment, and the other is called virodha yukta krodha, anger arising from frustration. Adherence to the philosophy of the Mayavadis, belief in the fruitive results of the Karmavadis, and belief in the plans based on materialistic desires are called avirodha priti. Jnanis, karmis, and materialistic plan makers generally attract the attention of conditioned souls. But when the materialists cannot fulfill their plans and when their devices are frustrated, they become angry. Frustration of material desires produces anger. So we have these material desires, and when they come to fruition, when we obtain that which it is that we want, or when we don't obtain it, it doesn't matter if we get that which we want or not, because it won't actually fulfill us. This is why you see so many celebrities, so many people of great status and great material position of power and wealth and beauty, that they're still, they're never happy. Someone with nice features, physical features, you see that the more attention they're getting for their looks, actually, the more flaws they begin to see within themselves. And the more work they choose to have done on themselves with different types of procedures, they're having someone cut into their own flesh so they can make implants or make reductions or um, do so many crazy things with their hard-earned money. They're putting all of their time that they spent into obtaining their money in such useless ways that gives so much indication of the kind of unhappiness and insecurity that they feel within themselves. Something's not right. They feel something's not right. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect, and I want to be perfect. So let me look for it in such ephemeral, temporary place, and then I'll be happy when I finally obtain the perfection that I think is there, and it's not. It's not there. So that's the beginning of such agitations. It's a place of misery, but that misery progresses and becomes more entangling when they become frustrated, when their devices are frustrated. Um, after all their plans go unfulfilled, um, they become angry. That frustration of material desires that produces anger. So similarly, the demands of the body can be divided into three categories: the demands of the tongue, the belly, and the genitals. One may observe that these three senses are physically situated in a straight line, as far as the body is concerned, and that the bodily demands begin with the tongue. If one can restrain the demands of the tongue by limiting its activities to the eating of prasad, the urges of the belly and the genitals can automatically be controlled. In this connection, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Sharira avidya jam, charanjahita hika, jivepale vishai sagare, ta madhye jiva ati, lobhamoisa dharmati, take jitakatina samsare, Krishna bharadoya moy, korabara jiva jai, swaprasara nadilo vai, sanamito kao, Radha Krishna Gunagao, Pramadako Chaitanya Nitai. O Lord, this material body is a lump of ignorance, and the senses are a network of paths leading to death. Somehow or other we have fallen into the ocean of material sense enjoyment, and of all the senses, the tongue is the most voracious and uncontrollable. It is very difficult to conquer the tongue in this world, but you, dear Krishna, are very kind to us. You have sent this nice prasad to help us conquer the tongue, and therefore let us take this prasad to our full satisfaction, and glorify your lordship, Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, and in love call for the help of Lord Chaitanya and Prabhu Nityananda. And we'll stop there, and we'll be back on tomorrow at 12 o'clock.